Welcome back, one and all, to another day, another episode here of The Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola, and on Tuesdays, you don't have any clue who's gonna be joining me, but this time, you're in luck. Generally not, it's a real crapshoot. But today, returning to the show, I'm totally joking, don't at anyone. Today, joining us, Yasmin. Welcome back to the show.
What an intro. That was such a crazy, and I don't know how to feel about it, but I'm happy to be here on a Tuesday with you, John.
Well, there are two ways that you can introduce someone. You can big them up, or you can undercut literally everyone else. And I like to mix it up. So this time I'm cutting people at the knees. But no, I'm kidding. We obviously love all our
I feel better about it now. Thank you.
No, it's great to have you back on. Because we got a lot of news to talk about. I'm gonna keep it real. I don't know exactly how today's show is gonna go because at any given moment, big breaking news could come. I like to every day. Exactly. I like to deliver for the audience. And so I was making some calls and trying to get them to push up the arrest, but we pretty much spoil all of our political capital on Big News Wednesdays. I can't do it on a Tuesday, but fingers crossed that the arrest happens. We'll be talking about it.
Not holding my breath for anything to happen today, but we will see. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe the protests are gonna take off or something. Like, I don't know, but we haven't seen it yet. So.
We haven't, but regardless of that, even if nothing develops during the show, we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. A little bit of domestic news. The brewing war between DeSantis and Trump has entered a particularly dirty and vicious cycle, and I hate to see that happen. I don't like American political discourse descending to those muddy depths. But Fox is facing a new lawsuit. We're gonna give you details on that. Maybe my favorite story of the day is the Texas Tribune has completed their investigation into the police response to the Uvalde mass shooting. And what they revealed about why they held back for so long is so incredibly damning, not just to the response, but to like the national discussion around gun control. And we're gonna talk about why that is. We're gonna talk a little bit about self-driving technology, why it's so much worse than it used to be, and a whole lot more besides. We got some fun coming up in the aftermath as well. Donald Trump, noted lover of the Bible, whiffing once again to just say a thing about the Bible, anything, one thing, a fact, an opinion. That'll be fun. And we're gonna give you some more details on the IPCC climate report that dropped at the beginning of this week. But all of that said, everyone, please hit the like button, share the stream so that people know we're live and they can join in the conversation. And if you want to send us any comments, tweets, or super chats, you might get your comment read on the air. And if it's particularly good, maybe you get a Blue Apron gift card. Because I remembered this morning that we're doing that. Forgot yesterday, sorry. But anyway, so please hit the like button in advance of that. With all that said though, Yasmin, are you ready to talk some news?
I'm ready, we got a lot to talk about.
We do. In fact, let's jump right in with this.
Yeah, when you see Donald Trump on Saturday try to announce his own arrest, what do you see him doing there?
This is really panic and fear. He knows what's coming on Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. He knows what's coming down the pike. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to get the advanced jump onto the story.
Okay, so it took a little bit of time for Michael Cohen to really respond to some of Donald Trump's tweets, the calls for protests and all that came earlier. And while I don't agree on plenty of things with Michael Cohen, I do agree that is entirely the strategy that Trump was advancing. Now, we're a couple of days past that, and so we can take stock of how it has actually developed. And interestingly, seems like crickets kind of. And what's weirdest about that isn't just that Donald Trump, who is, this huge political figure on the right, who has been able to get violent mobs in the streets before, is having difficulty in doing that once again. And in, this historic time of potentially a former president being arrested, it's that he's unable to do that at a time in which over the past couple of weeks, he has been shooting up in the polling against Ron DeSantis. Like, he is arguably more popular than he has been on the right in some time. And even so, it hasn't manifested outside of the courthouse and all that, where it's expected that maybe the arrest will happen maybe while we're live right here. Reporters were saying there were more reporters there than actual protesters. And sure, it's New York. This isn't Mar-a-Lago or anything, but there's gotta be some Trump fans, Yasmin, wouldn't you think?
Where are they? I haven't seen them, and from what I've seen of the reporters who are in New York and Washington, D.C., like there's not a whole lot going on. And you know what though? You know what I was thinking about? With January 6th, they had a long time to plan their insurrection and whatever it was at the riot, their tour visit, they had a lot of time to plan that. They only were given a couple of days notice here, so they didn't have all the time to organize and get everything set up the way that they wanted to. But I will say, I do love when Michael Cohen weighs in on Mr. Trump. It's my favorite. He so clearly can't stand the guy, but he also usually has some interesting insights into Trump's character and his general modus operandi, which is always so baffling to like normal people. So yeah. He's always a good time for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always funny. I mean, like he can't help but talk in a way that it really does feel like a mob situation.
He sounds like a mobster, which is just like it's very entertaining. I like it.
Which is kind of cool, I guess. But anyway, I just want to say one other thing about.
Don't be a hater, John. It is cool. It is cool.
I'm not being a hater. Anyway, I have one other thing I want to say about the Trump thing though, because we've been following his messaging around this for the past few days, and I'm not going to say that he's been rational for the last 48 hours. We're going to get into some of the comments he's made in just a few, but when it comes to calling for violent protests, he has backed off, right? I mean, he sent out those initial messages. There was a negative reaction, I think, from most sane people in response to that. And I don't feel like he's really continued it. I mean, if those messages were like a panic thing because of his fear of the impending arrest, well, he's much closer to that arrest now than he was. So wouldn't he be more panicked? And yet there have not been new calls unless, I don't know, maybe I can load Truth Social right now. Maybe he's typing it as we speak. It feels like he's at least backed off of that a little bit, which maybe speaks to his team being a little bit savvier than they would have been in previous years. I mean, they can't necessarily stop his knee-jerk reaction, but it looks like they've sort of taken hold of him since the weekend. And when the stakes are potentially destruction of property or people being killed, I'm glad to see that he hasn't been renewing those calls for people in the streets. If the arrest happens, then we'll see. Maybe they'll come at that point. If he's ever locked up, and I don't anticipate that will happen, God only knows what he'll be communicating to people at that point, Yasmin.
Yeah, I mean, you do have a good point. I always think it's interesting though how his team really doesn't seem to have a whole lot of control over the things that he tweets and the things that he just says. Even when he's giving a speech and he has a speech written for him there in front of him, but he still loves to go off the books. We know that Trump loves to go off the books. So, I mean, if his team is responsible for him backing off, then more power to him. Good job. They finally figured out how to do that years after he's already out of office.
Yeah, unfortunately, they weren't able to figure it out before the first coup.
Yeah, better late than never, I guess.
Yeah. Now, I want to turn to a little bit of the substance of what's being debated here. And yeah, I'm gonna preface the video that I'm gonna play in my reaction by saying, look, there's a lot of separate investigations that are moving forward when it comes to Trump. And I'm personally of the position, and I know that this is a radical position to hold, that even if you're powerful, if you commit a crime, even if it's not one we consider major, you should probably suffer the same consequences that anyone else would. Again, radical position. And we could debate, is this the one we would want an impending arrest to come for? And in fact, I say that sort of rhetorically. Let's very briefly, because I haven't gotten Yasmin's opinion on this. Is this the one that you'd like to see? Like if he does get fingerprinted and indicted and all that, this is the one, not the impending rape case, not the Georgia, the Fulton County investigation, not the classified documents investigation. A lot of people are saying, oh, there's all this concern about them blowing it and then ruining all the other investigations. What do you think about that big meta conversation?
It is a huge conversation. I mean, this whole scenario is very precedent setting, right? We've never really been in a situation like this, at least not in recent history in the United States of America, where we have a former president who has all these indictments and pending charges against him, right? And he's likely to be found guilty in a lot, if not all of these cases, right? I would love to see some kind of repercussions specifically for the Georgia case. The fact that he tried blatantly to overturn and throw out those votes in a nationwide election, I think that's a huge deal. And I can't believe that more hasn't already been done about it. But I do like and respect the fact that they are doing their due diligence because it is such a big, important case. And to the other point, it is a little delicate, right? You do have to be delicate because whenever you're dealing with the presidency, it is very easy to retroactively go back and look at every single president and say, this was illegal, you shouldn't have done this, blah, blah, blah. Everybody is talking right now about George W. Bush because we're coming up on the 20-year anniversary of the war in Iraq and all of the illegalities of that war and the fact that all of those repercussions we're still experiencing them today. So they do have to be delicate with it. I respect that, and I hope to see that they are successful in their endeavors and that none of this really gets blown, maybe not even more out of proportion than it needs to. It has to be handled effectively, and I think that they're doing that. It seems like they are.
Yeah, we'll see. I agree with you. That's the one that, like, if we had to choose, and again, I don't know why we would have to. That's the one that I consider to be most concerning, even more so than some of them are easier to prove. I think, like the classified documents. I don't know how much more clear what happened there could be, but trying to overturn the results of an election at the state level, I think would be the one I would want to look forward to. That said, we want to just make clear that people understand sort of what is actually happening in this particular case, because there's a lot of misinformation flowing around that. And we're gonna get that misinformation started here with Kevin McCarthy.
This was personal money. This wasn't trying to hide. This was 7 years ago, statute of limitation. And I think in your heart of hearts, you know too, that you think this is just political. And I think that's what the rest of the country thinks. And we're kind of tired of that.
Yeah, I'm tired of the illegality more so than the investigations, but sure, I'm tired of the whole thing. I would love to move on from this. Kevin McCarthy, you are one of the people stopping us from being able to do this because you keep defending Donald Trump as you are in that clip. He was only talking for maybe 10 seconds, but he made like 4 separate claims. All of them are nonsense. So really fast, he says it's personal money. Okay, does that make it better? You realize that spending personal money can be a violation of campaign finance laws. I don't even understand what point he thinks he's making there. There was no attempt to hide it. Is one of the most blatant falsehoods that I've ever heard a person in politics literally say. There's no attempt to hide it? No attempt, none at all. Michael Cohen took out a home equity loan to pay off another man's affair hush money. And then months later, Donald Trump began a series of like sub payments to conceal the total amount that is being transferred to his political goon. There was no attempt to hide it. I feel like that's kind of an attempt to hide it at that point, having someone else pay for it. The fact that it's against the statute of limitations, I will leave that up to the jury or the judge to figure out. Again, that might be enough, good cause to not be able to get him on this. But the fact that it wouldn't bother you because it's outside the statute of limitations, it was just a few years ago. If it was a violation of campaign finance laws and it was Biden, I have a feeling you would still experience a little bit of, even if delayed, moral outrage. But he's ready to move on. Then saying it's just political. Well, is it political? Well, it's about a politician. And we are in a time of politicians committing a lot of really obvious corrupt acts. And I am sick of the corruption, but you cannot simply say people are sick of these investigations as you then put down the mic and go back to sharing, I don't even know how many investigations of Joe Biden and his family and everything they've ever done. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there, Yasmin. What do you think about the arguments?
Well, you mentioned the investigations into Joe Biden and his family. Even Geraldo Rivera on Fox News is like, enough with the Hunter Biden stuff. It's not a thing, and the politicization of this, or the alleged politicization, I'll say, right? It's kind of a moot point because this isn't the Democrats prosecuting Donald Trump, right? This is happening in the Manhattan DA's office. This is happening in the state of Georgia. This is not the Democrats, they're not involved, and the Republicans aren't involved either, right? So all of their claims about they don't have the evidence, blah, 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 they don't know. They weren't there in the courtroom. They don't have access to those things. They weren't listening to the trial. They didn't hear any of that. A lot of it hasn't been made public yet. So they're speaking about things that they don't really understand, and they shouldn't. What they're doing right now is just trying to keep their base, right? And they want to also keep their base ignorant to a lot of things. So if they say things like some of the things that you just mentioned, like it's outside of the statute of limitations, they made no efforts to hide this information, they can say those things in an effort to trick their base, because their base is just going to hear that and say, yeah, well, I guess he didn't make any efforts, even though Michael Cohen literally served time in jail for this. It's like, how do you forget about that?
It is very convenient to forget that the idea, like, does it make sense for him to serve time for it? Probably. I mean, I feel like he knew that he was evading the law, and it was every bit of this was obviously done to impact an election. They were hiding extremely damaging personal information about a candidate, using money that has a campaign purpose to make it so that people don't find out about this. And again, add this to the pile of things that, isn't it weird that no Trump voter cares that they tried to hide this from him? That they had so little respect for his potential voters that they tried to make sure that they never found out about this scandal. The sort of scandal where if it was about any other politician, obviously they would have a major problem with it. But I agree with you, Yasmin, this is not the Democrats going after them. This is a particular DA. And you could say that he's wrong. You could say that he's biased. But if you're saying that at the same time that the House Republicans are literally in a partisan fashion investigating all of this nonsense and also calling for Biden to be impeached and all of them to be locked up, then there's a little bit of inconsistency there. You could say, like, there would be a little bit of moral grounding to their arguments if they were to say something like, you know what, it deeply bothers me that Donald Trump engaged in this sort of affair, that he tried to hide it from the American people. I feel like people have the right to know, what is going on with their politicians, but it kind of seems like this novel legal thing is probably not gonna get him. So it's personally distressing, but probably not legally. But they don't do any of that. They wanna have it all. They wanna experience every bit of it. They don't think that he should be investigated for this stuff. And also, they will never, ever, for a microsecond, engage intellectually with what it means that he did all of this stuff that he did. And if they would at least pretend to care about it, then there would be much less obvious hypocrisy when it comes to their never-ending quest to get Hunter Biden over his laptop or whatever. But they don't do that. Anyway, it is not just Kevin McCarthy though. And by the way, I don't know what's gonna end up happening with the investigators, because they're now being investigated, as we'll get to. Jim Jordan is trying to say the entire thing is just a bookkeeping error. Again, I dare you to engage with the substance of what the bookkeeping error was over, Jim Jordan. But no, Jim Jordan is probably not gonna do that. He has, after all, made a decades-long career of looking the other way. Anyway, he is trying to drag the investigators in to testify before Congress, saying Alvin Bragg now needs to talk to their committees. And I'll remind you again, there's a lot of, the word unprecedented is being thrown around a lot. This is a state level investigation. Why is Congress getting directly involved in this and questioning an ongoing legal process? This isn't questioning like the sentencing. We're not done with this. This is an ongoing process in a state level investigation. Why are they so involved in this? Anyway, and Rand Paul is saying the DA should be put in jail. So again, it is unacceptable to investigate your political opponents. And if you do it and show yourself to be my political opponent, you should be locked up for it. Little bit of inconsistency there, Yasmin. What do you think?
Rand Paul, I always get annoyed whenever I have to like comment on him, so I'm just not going to. But like the Republicans, they keep trying to press this narrative that all of these potential indictments against Trump are politically motivated, right? They're attacking the Manhattan DA. They're claiming that it was the Democrats who are doing this, even though none of this is taking place in a congressional setting. Jim Jordan's recent defense that it was a bookkeeping error, it's just like too little too late. So I don't really know what he's hoping to accomplish with this, apart from furthering the narrative that they already are so embedded in, right? They seem convinced that by making Trump a victim in all of this, he's essentially martyring himself for the cause. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, she said that a criminal indictment would only strengthen the Trump base more because, I don't know, I guess they love criminals. And Jim Jordan, like his point doesn't make any sense either. Like if the case was never dropped in the Manhattan DA's, he said something about it being dropped and then it was picked up whenever Trump announced his presidential run, but that isn't what happened. Cy Vance passed it down to Alvin Bragg when Bragg took over the office.
Yeah, but see, you say passed it down. I can change that to passed on it, and that's only a few letters different, so it's almost true.
Yeah, like he didn't seek re-election, and so he was replaced in office, and then he said, here's all the stuff I've been working on. That's what happened. But
exactly, yeah, and that gets manipulated into, again, and again, I'm not saying they're gonna get him. I understand that it would be super easy, and probably some people would have an appetite for just constantly saying like, oh no, everything's gonna work out and all of the bad people are gonna go to jail. I'm not covering this because I think that's necessarily gonna happen in this case or in any other case, but it is happening. It is unprecedented for us to be in this position where a major candidate for office has committed so many obvious crimes. And so we need to discuss it. In any event, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna take our first break. We're gonna come back to the DeSantis stuff because it's just too juicy at this point. But we're gonna respond to some of your comments. We'll be back with that in just a sec. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on out there. Dandy Houdini Dragon in the members comment says, whoop, Yasmin Iadarola, a real Tuesday treat. I think we're gonna need to finesse that a little bit, but I like where you're going. It's a good combo. Let's see. Oh, I did want to respond to this because I saw this as a YouTube comment. Soul Life says, limiting gifted memberships to something only members can do is an odd choice of limiting your income. I want to be very clear. I'm not a tech genius. I'm no Elon Musk. But to the best of my ability, that is not something that we control. The gifting tech infrastructure on YouTube is very limited in a lot of weird ways in comparison to Twitch. I don't know why. It's not like a setting, as far as I know, that I can adjust. So apologies for that. It is frustrating. Also, not logging how many individual people have gifted is really annoying. Like some people, like, you know, I'll throw out Moondragon, gift memberships like on a daily basis. And I know that because I follow the chat, but I wish that they would actually log it so that we give people the credit that's due. In any event, oh, what do you know? Moondragon gifted 5 damage for memberships. Thank you, Moondragon. You're the best. Pitchworks Dragon became a tier 1 member. Glad to have you here. Meredith Putvin, who's been a member for 3 months, says, according to Glenn Kirshner, Congress has no jurisdiction, full stop. I don't know that they can look into things. I think that a case needs to be made. I'm not a lawyer. We'll ask Adrian. I don't know. Okay, let's see. Moondragon said to super chat saying, yay, Yaz, and John 2 celebrating with Rainbow Dragon shirt. Thank you. And everyone can also celebrate with the Rainbow Dragon emoji as well. And if you have ideas for new emojis, we're coming up on when I'm gonna launch a new one. So give me some ideas, we'll throw them out there. There's a screenshot of a section of the Twitch chat that is just lots of people yelling, yes, over and over and over again. They're very happy to see you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And then one person saying I look like a beetle. Compare me to an icon of music. Keep it in my world. Anyway, Slammed and Cambered TTV has been a Twitch subscriber for 22 months, says, I want to give a shout out to everyone behind the scenes, especially Bart for the jams. Shout out to Bart, shout out to everyone behind the scenes making all of this possible. Okay, Papusa Joe has been here for 11 months, says, hello to all in the greatest home of progressives. Hello to you as well, thank you for being here. Felicity has been here for 19 months, says, what no better way to celebrate my 19 months than with TDR people. I agree, thank you. Technauseous says, keep the hair growing, John. Being over 40, I'm lucky to even have hair, so I'm growing mine out a bit as well. Don't let them bring down your growth. Follicle freedom for all. Thank you. I'm just seeing what happens. I've just declined to cut it. That's really all that's happened. Rebel Phoenix says, I hope they hold off till tomorrow. Trump getting arrested on my 40th birthday would be the best birthday present. Yeah, but or what about having a 40th birthday where the entire day you can rejoice at him having been arrested? So, you know, glass half full sort of thing. Anyway, by the way, if there's some big development on that, Mike, please let me know. I'm like trying to keep up, but you know, it's difficult. We have the benefit of East Coast time being 3 hours ahead, so it's a little bit more likely, all else being equal, but we'll see. Anyway, over on YouTube, Laurel Dragon gifted 5 damage report memberships. Thank you so much for that. Izzy Roberts has been a tier 2 member for 16 months and says, heavy night last night, John. Lol, or pre-celebrating bracelets on the orange fart. I don't know if that's a reference to, do I look particularly tired? I think I'm being accused of being, what, in a hangover or something? Anyway, I'm gonna try to wake it up. I'm gonna drink some coffee and we'll get to some more news after this. Okay, let's have a little bit of fun. Just to remind everyone, in case they didn't see it on yesterday's show, let's jump into this video.
And look, I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair. I can't speak to that.
I can't speak to that, but I am going to speak about that just a little bit to give you a few chuckles at Donald Trump's expense. So that was Ron DeSantis. And look, he could have slammed Trump a lot more. Maybe he will in the near future. And he did decline to get involved if they were to try to like go to Mar-a-Lago and haul Donald Trump out. He says he's not going to get involved, which is also notably not a defense for Donald Trump. And so we speculated on yesterday's show that is going to lead to a nuclear response from Donald Trump. And we've already seen this on today's pre-port. I showed Don Jr. attacking Ron DeSantis in an increasingly nasally, high-pitched voice. But now we have Donald Trump. And here's what he has to say about the governor of Florida. Ron DeSanctimonious will probably find out about false accusations and fake stories sometime in the future as he gets older, wiser, and better known. When he's unfairly and illegally attacked by a woman, even classmates that are underage, or possibly a man. I'm sure he will want to fight these misfits just like I do. And he included a screenshot of a tweet from Midas Touch showing that photo of Ron DeSantis famously partying with students when he was much younger. And look, there's been reporting on that already. We covered it at the time. He does seem to have been kind of inappropriate, but so far as I've seen, there's been no accusations of affairs with students. But what you have right there, to be very clear, is a multi-pronged smear job against Ron DeSantis. Not only saying that he's gonna face these accusations, which could be read as a threat, but that they will come in the form of women making false accusations and possibly men too. And also, there is no, I guess, more taboo area for attacks on the right now than claiming that someone is a groomer. And that is clearly what Donald Trump is doing once again, Yasmin. So what do you think about this? Was this a bad call for Ron DeSantis to get involved at all?
I mean, he really doesn't need to get involved at all because the story is going to play out how it's going to play out regardless. And if it goes the way a lot of us think it will, it's going to work out pretty well for Ron DeSantis. But it is so funny to me how Trump keeps bringing up this picture of Ron DeSantis with underage girls as if he's never engaged in any kind of sexual misconduct himself, right? And I mean, it is an actual story that was covered. I think it was in the New York Times. I covered it on the breakdown even. And you're right, it probably should be a bigger story than it is. But if the Trump base is floundering between Trump and DeSantis now, I don't think they'll care about this picture. They didn't care about a lot of similar stories. So I don't think this picture will be the deciding factor between Trump and DeSantis for that particular MAGA base. But yeah. John, maybe Trump was just being very woke in that tweet by not assuming Ron DeSantis' sexuality. You know, maybe he's just being very open-minded. Maybe he's learning, maybe he's growing.
Yeah, I think, and it's very inspirational to see a guy at this advanced age still willing to question what he believes and knows. No, I don't think that's what it is. I think
you don't think so? You don't think that's what it is?
I think that we have already gotten to the point where we all suspected deep in our gut we were gonna get to, he's just calling Ron DeSantis gay.
He is.
That's what it is. It's nothing more lofty or philosophical or ideological than that. He's pointing at Ron DeSantis and saying,
I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume, people can grow, John. Maybe that's what's happening. But but seriously, the fact that DeSantis being gay can potentially destroy his political career is obviously bigoted and dumb. But it would expose the fact, that the party stands for very hypocritical things as far as their stance against the LGBTQ community. Yeah. So it's almost like they're being self-aware in the fact that they know that this would hurt their base. Or their entire political party, rather.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously we don't want this sort of blatant homophobia to have any effect in elections. We could also comment at the same time and say, well, Ron DeSantis certainly has been stoking as much homophobia as anyone else in right-wing politics in recent years. It's also absurd so far as we know. Ron DeSantis is married, has been married for a long time. He has kids, and I know all of this because I'm never gonna be able to forget that weird political ad that he made years ago. He seems to be a straight man. And as Yasmin pointed out, people in glass houses aren't supposed to throw stones and all that. Donald Trump loves throwing stones that have been genetically engineered to pierce his own glass. Not only is he a guy who is known to have had affairs and all that, he has made any number of bizarre comments specifically about extremely young women. He made a comment on video once about this like 10-year-old girl is like, I'm gonna be dating you in a decade, which is probably optimistic, but also, why is that a thing that you're thinking about at all? It also brings to mind something that I have a feeling Ron DeSantis is probably immune from, which is like accusations of making weird sexualizing comments about your own daughter, which Donald Trump has done multiple times enthusiastically on multiple TV shows. So I don't know, maybe it's just you throw enough mud and it just sort of cancels out, or maybe like you said, I don't think that this attack is going to make a difference. And I agree that I don't think the substance of the attack will make a difference, but that doesn't mean that the attack or the attacks won't make a difference. Because again, I do think that this is primate behavior. I think that they bow down to the gorilla that throws the biggest lump of poo. And I don't think the content of the poo necessarily matters, what food went into its production, but they wanna see someone being aggressive. And Donald Trump does that better on the right than anyone else.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and I like your analogy, but I think something that Trump does very well is that he just keeps repeating things over and over and over again so that it's lodged in people's brains. So even though this DeSantis picture hasn't had the impact that he seems to want it to have on his base, if he keeps saying it enough times, eventually it might, eventually it might actually damage DeSantis and whatever image and brand he's trying to build leading up to whatever election he's about to be running in. So we'll see. And I mean, he has used this tactic before to great success, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll see. By the way, that tweet that we showed you, or the bleat of Donald Trump, he had an earlier one. We'll show you just briefly. Nikki McCann Ramirez, friend of the show, had tweeted this out. It was sort of a simpler, more stripped down attack. It was accusing him of potentially having had an affair with a woman and a man, but he decided to add on the groomer angle later. And by the way, this is not just a random attack. I mean, it is very much a random attack, but according to Rolling Stone, Trump has spent months privately soliciting and regurgitating various bits of salacious gossip about DeSantis, including unverified allegations about his private life. At the time, this is from a couple months ago, Rolling Stone declined to publish where the president had been spreading these things, but one of the uncorroborated or baseless rumors that Trump was gossiping about was in fact about DeSantis supposedly being gay, according to two people familiar with the comments. Again, this should not even be a thing that you can attack someone over, and it appears to be utter nonsense. I have no idea where he's getting it from, but this is probably going to be a recurring thing. Like, why not? For the the super broken version of masculinity, or what passes for masculinity on the right, claiming that someone's gay is probably going to be effective. So Ron DeSantis should buckle up. Oh, by the way, he's also doing really bad. If we go to this last graphic, he's trailing Trump now by 28 points in recent polls. And this is while Trump is at risk of potentially being locked up. It's just pathetic. Anyway, I don't think that we have time for the ban, and maybe we can bring it back tomorrow. We got to move on to other news because Donald Trump is not the only one facing legal action. Why don't we jump into this? Fox News is, of course, still in the process of their Dominion lawsuit back and forth. They're facing billions of dollars potentially in fines there, but that's not the only lawsuit they're facing. One of their producers has launched a lawsuit. This is Abby Grossberg, who has accused Fox lawyers of behavior actually tied in with that other lawsuit. She says that they coerced her into giving misleading testimony in their ongoing legal battle over these unfounded big lie conspiracy theories. Grossberg said that Fox lawyers had tried to position her and Maria Bartiromo to take the blame for Fox's repeated airing of conspiracy theories after Dominion voting systems and its supposed role in manipulating the results of the election, which I sort of get the strategy, at least when it comes to Bartiromo. She did willingly have a lot of those conspiracy theorists on her show. I don't know about Abby Grossberg's culpability. But in her complaints, she accuses lawyers for Fox News of coaching her in a coercive and intimidating manner. Before her deposition last September, the Dominion case, the lawyer, she said, gave her the impression that she had to avoid mentioning prominent male executives and on-air talent to protect them from any blame while putting her own reputation at risk. And it is super interesting. Like, I totally am not surprised by them trying to protect the on-air talent. But why specifically are they trying to protect the male executives? This isn't like the O'Reilly thing. This isn't, an Ailes thing. This is not anything about sexual misconduct or anything. This is about election conspiracy theories, Yasmin. I don't know why there'd be the focus on the male thing, but that is Fox News. They apparently were willing to throw one producer, one host, two women under the bus to protect the guys at the top.
Yeah, well, the reason why is detailed in the allegation that there's a culture at Fox News of, rampant misogyny and discrimination, right? And so I think that's enough of a reason as to why they're so keen to protect these male executives who aren't really directly involved in this scandal, or maybe they are. But these allegations are shocking, and at the same time, they're not really that surprising. And I think you kind of know what misogyny looks and feels like, especially as a woman. You understand that, right? But when you get specific examples like the ones that were detailed in this case, it still kind of takes you back. These specific examples, they matter though, because without them, people will continue to just downplay the experiences of others to no end and just act like that's not a real thing, you're making it up. They'll just gaslight you, basically. And we already know what the critics of this case are gonna say before anyone has ever even seen or heard any evidence that no one can force you to do anything. No one can make you say something you don't wanna say, that you're responsible for the words that come out of your own mouth under oath. And they're gonna act like coercion and blackmail aren't real and that they're irrelevant when discussing legal proceedings, but we know that that isn't the case.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this whole thing, maybe it's because I've been rewatching season 3 of Succession in anticipation of the new season. It has such strong Succession. Like, I feel like Abby Grossberg is very much the Tom, or maybe the Greg, maybe Bartiromo is the Tom that they're trying to throw under the bus. And of course they're gonna do that. And when they do that, of course they're gonna choose women for it. She said, that's what the culture is there. They don't respect or value women. And honestly, if this is like revelatory to you, welcome to American politics, or congrats for getting out of your coma, because that has been so obvious for so long. Of course they don't, of course they don't, of course they don't. You referenced some of the specific allegations. We're just gonna quickly run through a few of them. Fox superiors apparently called Miss Bartiromo a crazy bitch who was menopausal, asked Miss Grossberg to cut the host out of coverage discussions. So I guess she can still be the host, but she doesn't get to choose what they cover at that point. They said that Nancy Pelosi was pictured in huge pictures in a plunging swimsuit in Tucker Carlson's office. She was apparently a senior booking producer for Tucker Carlson. Let's see, the next day after she realized that, Justin Wells, top producer for Carlson, called Miss Grossberg into his office to ask whether Mrs. Bartiromo was having a sexual relationship with Kevin McCarthy. They joked about Jewish people and freely deployed a vulgar term for women that was eventually clarified. Yes, it does start with a C, and see you next to, you get where we're going with that. That's what they were that's the culture in their office. You throw that around. They debated which of two female gubernatorial candidates were more effable. And look, it says a lot about the men in these offices that they feel perfectly willing having these conversations in front of literally everyone else. But it says everything about the management too. These employees know that Tucker's not gonna care about this. The management isn't gonna be mad at them for this. This is the culture that Tucker Carlson and Fox News has allowed to fester.
Yeah, and it's interesting that even when they're actively defending themselves against defamation in a lawsuit of unheard of scale and national importance, they still can't act right. It really is something that's so ingrained in the culture that I don't really know at this point how you stamp something like that out. And this is kind of what happens whenever you have a culture, whenever you have even a president, right? Whenever Trump was elected president, whenever he was running for his first election back in 2015, and he was saying all these terrible things about all these different minority groups, including women, we said this is going to be a problem. This is going to create a culture where saying these types of things is going to be okay. People are going to think that they're okay, and it's going to penetrate the culture. It's going to set the whole culture back, right? It's going to set all of us back decades, if not centuries, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened, and that's exactly what we're seeing embodied here at Fox News.
Yeah, and look, they're now countersuing. They're saying, here's their statement. Fox News Media engaged an independent outside counsel to immediately investigate the concerns raised by Mrs. Grossberg. Oh yeah, they're taking it super seriously, which were made following a critical performance review. We will vigorously defend these claims. So she's just mad because she got a bad review, which is the sort of claim you make because it's plausible. You could have someone who's just striking back against their employer after a bad review. but it's also like so easy to accept. And that does not make it true. But every bit of this feels like something that could be true. So again, don't jump to any conclusions. We'll be following along as it happens. We're gonna add this to the ever-growing pile of investigations that are ongoing and lawsuits, especially just regarding Fox News. But serious claims, and I share your concern, Yaz. I don't know how you fix this. This is years and years and years after like the rampant sexual harassment and sexual assault going in Fox. And is this progress? I mean, I guess there's maybe less assault, but it still seems incredibly toxic. Anyway, with that said, we do need to take our second break because this hour is racing by. When we come back, we're gonna jump into the results of that investigation into the Uvalde police after this. It's so hard to fit in all the news, damn it. Anyway, let's see what's going on over there in the audience. Jonah Morton, member for 6 months, says it's 2023. You gay is not the insult people think it is these days. Most men are a little gay once they're blindfolded. That did not end where I thought it was going to. Yeah, no, I think for reasonable people, it's not an insult at all, but these are not reasonable or mature people. They are deeply homophobic, deeply broken people. Brianna Rosalie, member for 27 months. Thank you, I appreciate that comment. Laurel Dragon's been a member for 27 months, says going to Atlanta to see a concert I was supposed to see last year. So excited to roll in the Docks neighborhood. Love to all my Dragon fam. Yes, next time I go to, so my brother actually lives near Atlanta. But next time I visit him, hope I can meet up with the Doc. It'd be great to see a bit of the city with him. Okay, Progressive Canuck, AKA Maple Syrup Dragon, member for 19 months, says working night shift, but figured put on the show while I lay down to nap. Thank you for all the great work, everyone at the Damage Report. There's a little bit of an implication there that listening to the Damage Report helps one fall asleep. I don't appreciate that. Thank you for watching. Anyway, Darren, member for 4 months, says, can we not forget that the money was only the tip of the iceberg? Trump forced Miss Daniels into a sexual encounter. It was assault, but stigma. That's a good point. I mean, that's not specifically what's being adjudicated in this, but thank you for reminding us of the context there. Okay, Spanking Spider Dragon, appreciate the super chat. Can't read that out loud, but thank you, much appreciated. Anyway, Ryan says, did you see conservative states trying to put Biden or other Dems through indictment on superficial or made up things in response to Trump's indictment, or do you see? That's interesting. Yasmin, you think, I mean, I guess we already are sort of doing that. They're investigating the border, they're investigating COVID, they're investigating Fauci and the pullout of Afghanistan. I feel like they're already kind of doing that, although we don't really see it at the state level. Do you anticipate that?
What was the question? Investigating what at the state level?
Like in response to what's going on in these state level investigations of Trump, do you anticipate seeing that at the state level for Biden?
That's a really good question. I think that they would try to. Yeah, I believe that. I know here in Texas, we have a very, very red state government, and our our attorney general, he's actually embattled in his own legal battles himself. Like he's being accused of his own crimes here. So like there's just so many layers of corruption that trickle down to state and even local governments. So I wouldn't be surprised if I did see some of that start to happen in states like maybe Florida, Texas, Arizona, wherever else.
Yeah, maybe, we'll see.
Maybe.
I see a YouTube comment. Vixen Bell says, I used to sleep to TDR all the time. It's not boring, but John's voice is soothing. Yeah, but it kind of sounds like you're saying both. But anyway, thank you for the comment. I do appreciate it. Okay, let's see. Gabby. Gabby says in the members' comments, John's hair makes him look like either a Disney prince or an alpaca, in a good way. Thank you. Speaking
what
as
about
an alpaca.
The Emperor's New Groove? Like a little bit of both.
I've actually never seen that.
Oh, it's a good one. You should watch it.
There
yeah,
are
I
some
think you'll
gaps in my Disney history. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, that one's fun.
Okay, Stop Dragon says this charge is the most likely to stick because the others are more serious. The elite don't want him in prison because that would set a bad precedent. They want him disqualified from running. Yeah, I don't know how likely that is coming out of this, but that's interesting strategically. The thing is, I don't generally believe that all this is like top down or whatever, but it's something to bear in mind. Thank you for the comment. Okay, let's see. We're rapidly running out of time. Lots of comments to get to, and we will as soon as we can. But first, more news. Okay, everybody, lots of news to get to. Let's jump directly into this. The Texas Tribune has released the results of an investigation into the absolutely horrendous response to the Uvalde mass shooting. And they specifically focused on why did it take so long for the police to make a move? Why did they wait for that SWAT team, which was 60 miles away, to arrive before they moved in? And what they have found is not surprising, but they found a lot of evidence for it. They were terrified of the gun. The guy had an AR-15 and they didn't want to go up against it. It's what we suspected, but they could not be clearer that that was what it was. Sergeant Daniel Coronado of the Uvalde Police Department is on recording from the actual incident saying, "I have a male subject with an AR." Another officer says, "F," just out loud, is shocked and horrified at the prospect of going up against this gun. Another just says AR. Like that's the code. We do not want to go up against an AR. Donald Page goes on to say, "There was no way of going in. We had no choice but to wait and try to get something that had better coverage where we could actually stand up to him." So bear in mind, some of this is coming from body cam footage and analysis of that. Some is coming from investigations and interviews that came right after the shooting. Some of it is a little bit more delayed. All of these police officers were apparently reached out to by the Texas Tribune, and none agreed to participate in their investigation. But we want to give you some more of the results of it. Detective Luis Landry says, "We weren't equipped to make entry to that room without several casualties. Once we found out it was a rifle he was using, it was a different game plan we would have to come up with. It wasn't just going in guns blazing, the old West style, and take him out." Chief Arredondo, you remember him, he says, "We're gonna get scrutinized for why we didn't go in there. I know the firepower he had based on what shells I saw, the holes in the wall in the room next to his. The preservation of life, everything around the gunman was a priority." Well, the preservation of some people's lives, the preservation of the lives that could be lost trying to rush this guy with a weapon of war, not necessarily the preservation of the lives around him in that room that were at risk if you didn't go in. And by the way, all of this, the point of this coverage, why I want to cover it, is they were clearly terrified. And I'm not doing this coverage to say, "Oh, look at them, look at these cowards." I think they should be terrified. I would be terrified. I have enough empathy that I can just make myself terrified thinking about what they were going up against. The point is that they were terrified. An entire group of police officers, some of whom, by the way, had ARs of their own, were so terrified at the prospect of going up against someone with this weapon that they couldn't imagine doing so until they had the SWAT team, which had better armor, because apparently this AR would just shred their body armor, better shields and those sorts of things. And that is the entire point. If you can routinely go out and just buy a weapon that will incapacitate, paralyze a police department, I don't know, maybe we ban that gun. Maybe you should not be able to spend $1,200 and nullify all of the law enforcement in a small town. But that is not the lesson that was learned from Uvalde. The cops, by the way, who are terrified of being shot with this gun, are not a part of the solution of trying to get those guns off the street. That's its own issue. And I'm not saying that no cops are on our side on that, but that's incredibly frustrating. And so, Yaz, I want your thoughts about this. It is so frustrating that this is such a clear example of why these guns cannot be available for civilian use. And yet we're months and months and months out of this, and nobody seems to have learned that lesson.
Yeah, so real quick, I just want to say I do like the Texas Tribune as a publication. They get hit by a lot of people on the right for being maybe too leftist or too left-leaning. But honestly, I think they actually do a decent job of covering stories accurately and with journalistic integrity. I'm not like sponsored by the Texas Tribune. Do I need to say that? But it just so happens that a lot of the facts and realities that they report on just aren't flattering to Texas Republicans and the people who tend to align with those beliefs. So when I first read this story, I think I read it sometime yesterday, I wanted to just roll my eyes and say, oh, that's typical. But I didn't really want to think about it much more beyond that, because who wants to think about the fact that these grown men in their chosen profession decided to let children face the weapon that they themselves were too cowardly to face, even though the children didn't have the additional body armor on that they had. And even though the children obviously didn't have weapons to protect themselves. And you know what's ironic about it is every single cop that I've ever spoken to personally about their job loves to tell me how dangerous it is for them. And I'm not trying to deny that, right? Obviously, it's a very dangerous profession. But if they're so utterly aware of how dangerous it is, and again, no one's making them be cops, right? They can choose another profession that's less dangerous if it's too much for them. But they knew what this job entailed when they took it, right? They knew the risks that they were taking. And every cop that I've ever spoken to who is so quick to talk about the dangers of the job also says that they do it because they want to serve and protect their communities. And I'm just not seeing that here. The children did not choose this life. They were just going to school. They were counting on these grown, armed, and armored men to defend them. And those men just chose not to do their jobs.
Yeah, and again, we can disagree on interpretations. Like I said, I'm not trying to get on the cops for being scared. I'm getting on our entire society for not learning anything from that fear. And by the way, I'm not saying that I never get on cops for being scared. The fact that they're perpetually afraid that literally anyone they pull over could shoot them leads to a lot of needless death. I'm saying in this particular case where there's already been a mass shooting, I understand it. It's up to the politicians, it's up to our populace to change the law so that we don't end up with more of these situations. Also, fact check, I'd referenced spending $1,200 to nullify an entire police force. I was wrong about that. I'm being told you can get them now for $400. Ridiculous. You should not be able to buy a weapon that nullifies an entire police force for less than an Xbox. And don't fact check me about how much an Xbox costs. I assume it's like $400. I don't care. An Xbox and a Switch, fine. In any event, here's the issue. Coming out of that shooting, the talk was not, oh my God, look what one can do with an AR. It was mental health this, but do nothing about it. It was, a lost generation that, but do nothing about it. You had people like, I'm just gonna summarize with Senator Bob Hall, state senator, a Republican, who said, this man had enough time to do it with his hands or a baseball bat. And so it's not the gun, it's the person. Except that it was the gun. You didn't hear the cops routinely being recorded as saying, oh my God, he's got a bat. A bat? A bat? We're not going in there against a bat. No, it was the AR. But think about this. This person said he had enough time to do it with his hands. He thought a person is gonna go into a school and with their bare hands kill dozens of people. This is the insanity that we're up against, trying to save people's lives. And I'm also just gonna briefly mention that a judge has now blocked a law regulating which sorts of handguns can be sold in California. We'll see, it's gonna be appealed and all that. But this could have cascading effects that stop a lot of regulations on handguns. This is Cormac Carney, US District Court judge. He said it's unconstitutional, cannot be enforced. What does the law do? It requires that any new handgun has to have 3 components. A chamber load indicator, which shows whether the gun is loaded, seems like just a very reasonable thing to have to stop people from accidentally being killed. A magazine disconnect mechanism that will stop the gun from firing if the magazine is not properly inserted. And micro stamping capability so law enforcement can more easily link spent shell casings to the guns they were fired from. All either routine safety mechanisms or the ability to look into and investigate crimes. Nope, can't do it because no handgun, according to the judge, available in the world has all 3 of these features. These regulations are having a devastating impact on Californians' ability to acquire and use new state-of-the-art handguns. Well, hypothetically state-of-the-art. I mean, we could speculate that state-of-the-art could be handguns that are manufactured to stop people from needlessly being killed by them. But apparently, and this has been going on for years, apparently no gun manufacturer has been willing to make a gun that has these safety features. You can make guns incredibly safe if you want to. You can make guns almost impossible for a random person to steal and then kill someone with. But they're choosing not to, knowing that a judge is gonna have their back. And that's what we're seeing in this case. Okay, unfortunately, we gotta move ahead to this last story. I apologize, Yasmin, just because we're running out of time. We're gonna jump into this, sorry. Let's move to the D block with the limited amount of time that we have. What has become of full self-driving technology? That technology that was supposed to be like the cornerstone of Tesla's tech dominance in the auto industry. It might seem like in recent years it's gotten worse, and that's because it has, but not randomly it's gotten worse. It got worse because of the decisions of one man, and what do you know? It's Elon Musk. So here's what happened. Back in 2021, this is May of 2021, Tesla announced that it was eliminating radar systems on new cars. And soon after that, they began disabling the radars of cars that already had them. So why do that? Because up until that point, the self-driving technology, which is not full self-driving, it's just branding. Everybody needs to understand that it's assisted driving, used a combination of cameras, sensors, and radar to try to drive in a safe fashion. Apparently, Musk decided that was no longer needed. The sleek bodies of the cars, they say, already bristled with 8 cameras designed to view the road and spot hazards. Musk said that should be enough. Now, notably, his engineers did not believe that that should be enough. They said that you need this radar. They believe that Teslas would be susceptible to basic perception errors if the cameras were obscured by raindrops or even just bright sunlight. One Tesla autopilot engineer who spoke on the condition of anonymity said, "I just knew that putting that software out in the streets would not be safe. You can't predict what the car is going to do." But the issue is that when it came down to the engineers saying one thing and Musk saying another, he regrettably is in charge. And so he overruled his engineers and they got rid of radar. They began disabling radar for the ones that already had it. And as a result of that, you started to immediately see more crashes, more near misses, and other embarrassing mistakes. So that probably leads you wondering, why do this then? Well, apparently doing the radar going forward and all that is expensive. He wanted the cars to be cheaper. He didn't believe that it was necessary, and he didn't care to hear from the people who had actual tech expertise in this area. I just want to remind everyone, I understand that you have been trained for years to believe that Elon Musk is in like a big warehouse like Tony Stark, like welding things and coding. That doesn't happen. He's not an engineer. He doesn't understand how these things work. And that's fine. You don't need to do that to be a CEO. The issue is when you're overriding the legitimate safety concerns of actual engineers with training in this area. And that's what he did. And people have already lost their lives as a result of the accidents that we've seen with this technology. Yasmin, what do you think?
Yeah, Elon Musk is so lame. And I know that I'm just a peon who doesn't have billions of dollars, and I'm just a woman who isn't cool. So like, who am I to criticize someone like Elon Musk? But he has the dumbest sense of humor. And I bring this up because it's so dumb that it makes me not trust him. Like, I can't trust someone who still thinks that 69 and 420 are funny. And I don't trust or understand the way his mind works. And maybe that's because I'm not a genius like he is. Maybe that's possible, right? But it seems like his priorities are skewed. And it seems like his ego drives a lot of his quote unquote innovation and a lot of his quote unquote disruption of industries, right? But ultimately, it's unsafe. This is why we can't be relying on these billionaires to fix all of our problems. I think back in the day, Elon was looked at like kind of a hero for a brief period in time because he was like a younger guy and he wasn't like, like a Bill Gates or any of these other old, wonky billionaires. And the idea, I think the perception was that he was more in tune with the average American and that he was apparently into science and he wasn't, backing, any kind of religious fanaticism or whatever. But that facade only lasted for so long. It didn't take long for people to understand that billionaires are not normal. They never are normal. They're not geniuses. They are exploitative. That's what he is.
Yeah, no, 100%. Deeply weird. I would argue that we liked him before we knew what he was actually like and the effects of his disastrous decisions.
Before you get to know someone, it's not always
exactly.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, pulling people off of Tesla to go work for Twitter or whatever is probably not going to help when you're facing these major issues, which are being investigated, by the way, by the DOJ. No, 100% they don't. It's important technology. Somebody hopefully will figure it out, but at this point, I don't know why anyone would have any faith that his company is going to be the one that does it. And by the way, he's described full self-driving as, quote, the difference between Tesla being worth a lot of money and being worth basically zero. So one would think you would then err on the side of safety, but he decided to go in a different direction. And unfortunately, very often so do Teslas. Anyway, that's all the time we have for the first hour of the show. There's a lot coming up in the aftermath though, so please join us for that. Thank you to everybody watching on the linear platforms, listening on the podcast. We will see the rest of you in just a few. Welcome back to the Aftermath, everybody. I'm here, John Iadarola. Yasmin Khan is here. Yaz, what can people expect out of you content-wise in the near future?
Oh, in the near future. Well, today I talked a little bit about all of the Trump legal woes. I know we talked about it a little bit here on the show today. Kind of gave you a recap and an overview of what's going on, and gave some of the things that are being said about the Trump saga, let's call it, and also the Fox saga as it relates to the ongoing Trump saga. So that's what's coming up next on the breakdown.
There's a lot of sagas going on.
There are.
And what about global thread news?
Oh my God, yeah, I am behind on that. I need to relaunch it. Thank you for asking me about that publicly.
Just a little poke.
I know, I need to. But seriously though, I did take some time off from it whenever I started doing content for Rebel HQ and for the breakdown. So I have been looking to relaunch it soon, and I'm kind of excited to, because I did love my podcast. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, I talked about issues that are going on around the world, some more global conflicts that are relevant, current events, things that don't really get a whole lot of coverage in American media, things that you might hear a little bit about, but you don't really know what's going on. So I would love to get that going again. A lot of history there too. It's fun.
Love it, love it. Okay, also want to let everyone know I'm going to be co-hosting Unbossed coming up later on today. Always happy to appear. Love Nina Turner. So we're going to be talking in just a little bit. Also, I had forgotten during the first hour my previous pledge to make good Blue Apron gift cards, but I have a comment which combines multiple movie references, which I love. Nostra Science says, John Iadarola is going with the Lord of the Rings style Aragorn version of the Viggo Mortensen look today. Do we get Viggo's Das Boot Captain look tomorrow if Donald Trump gets U-boat torpedo sunk later today? I'm going to have to look up what that looks like and whether I have the technology to produce it, but I am going to try to figure that out. For now though, Nostra Science, assuming you haven't already gotten one, Blue Apron gift card. Send an email to rewards@tyt.com with your first and last name, as well as Nostra Science, and they'll get you hooked up. We got some other comments to read, which we will soon, but first, the news. Let's talk about the Bible, everyone. I've been dying to talk about the Bible. Let's jump into this.
I brought my Bible. What's my first favorite book? The Bible. Did you know what I said is my first favorite book? The Bible. I love the Bible. I love the Bible. The Bible. The Bible. The Bible. The Bible.
Donald Trump just loves the Bible, and if you accept that, he's got a Bible to sell you, I'm sure, with MAGA written on the cover of it. The con that has been perpetrated on conservative Republicans that Donald Trump is an enthusiastic religious man is maddening. But it also continues because as he launches towards potentially being arrested later on this week, his defenders are not just arguing in his defense politically, they're doing it religiously as well. Take a look at what Roger Stone had to say on this little special prayer thing, this prayer defense of Donald Trump they had recently.
It is now vitally important that every American pray for the safety of President Trump and his family. And his enormous courage in this moment. As I said earlier, I spoke to him Sunday morning. He called me, we prayed together on the phone. He was in an excellent mood. He is a man completely without fear because he puts his faith in the Lord.
We are not supposed to claim without evidence that things aren't true or can't be true. That said, yes, I feel like there is no way that happened. Maybe they talked on the phone, but the idea that of all the couples in the universe that Donald Trump, with all that we know about him and the infidelity and the rage and the retribution, all that, and Roger Stone of all people, that they would spend time on the phone praying, and not in like an ironic way that they then have a big chuckle about. I find that to be impossible to believe. Am I a bad guy? What do you think?
You know, God is a forgiving God. So you can do and say all these horrible things, but as long as you identify Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you're saved, right? And that's honestly how, like, I'm being a little facetious right now, but that's really what a lot of these people believe. And it's one thing to say that you support Donald Trump as a Christian, and even people like Roger Stone as Christians, because maybe they support the Christian agenda, whatever that may be, maybe regarding like the LGBTQ community and obviously the abortion issue, right? Donald Trump's presidency definitely helped to push those very Christian valued ideologies forward during the 4 years that he was president. But to pretend that he's a practicing Christian is absolutely delusional, right? They really seem to need to believe that though, because if he's a Christian, somehow that would negate or excuse all of the horrible things that he does and says. I don't understand it, but I'm not one of them.
Yeah, they have to believe it, I guess. I guess if it's important to you, the idea that you would be supporting someone who is so clearly flawed in all of these different Christian values metrics, I guess is impossible. And so,
I mean, they also believe that he was literally chosen by God to be our president, right? Like they can quote Bible verses. I don't know which Bible verses, but they do it. They quote Bible verses and say he's here for a purpose and blah, 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 which I mean, you could say that about anybody really.
Yeah, well, and they do about every Republican. And weirdly enough, he was chosen to be our president in 2016. And the fact that he didn't win in 2020 was also God's will. God does work in mysterious ways when it comes to the popular vote. But anyway, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's so clearly a con. And I don't feel like I should need to convince people of this. Donald Trump is what, like 120 years old? He has had plenty of time to come to God if he was gonna do that, or in the absence of that, to learn just enough to grift when it comes to Christianity. And that's not that difficult. Plenty of people do that. Plenty of people have mega churches and make millions of dollars with their minimal understanding of Christianity, just enough to con the rubes. But Donald Trump does not do that. He has spent literally years flunking the easiest tests when it comes to Christianity. We have a recent example actually from that special event. Take a look at this.
My wife and I, Pastor Jackson, everybody out there is praying for you. And I think a lot of people are looking for a specific need that you have, sir. What is the prayer that you would like for the thousands of pastors who are tuning in right now? What is the specific prayer request that you have tonight, sir?
And we have some phone communication problems because I'm not sure that I can hear you. If you want to say something, I'd like to hear that.
Yes, Chamberlain, we can hear him.
Okay, perfect.
Inspiring words. Look, you can have phone problems. It happens. When we first tried to interview Marianne Williamson, we couldn't get the connection right or whatever. But that was a suspicious time. That suddenly there were all these tech problems. And also I'm driving through a tunnel and there's an ion storm, which is causing tech. Because you'll notice he doesn't eventually get back around to naming one prayer. Just name one prayer. Talk about either or both Corinthians again. You could at least do that. He couldn't remember a quote that Jesus said, or Luke, or Paul. I don't know, I'm pulling that out of my ass because that's how easy it is to do. Yes, he can't answer the most basic questions.
I just don't know why he isn't called out more for that with his Christian base, right? They keep insisting that he's a Christian, and it's like, why? How could you possibly be, right? I'm not Christian. I was never raised Christian, but I've studied it more than Donald Trump has apparently studied it, right? Like even living in America, growing up as an American, Christianity and the Bible, it's almost integral with our culture, right? For better or for worse, right? Whether or not it should be. I mean, you watch the Wedding Crashers movies and you get, your fair share of Bible quotes and Bible verses right there. He's really almost going out of his way to just not care, to do like the bare minimum of due diligence to sell this facade. But really, I guess he doesn't really have to because they believe it anyway. So
that's true. No, you're totally right. I mean, look, I'm not gonna say that not doing the bare minimum has never hurt him, but it is amazing. Like he, because of his birth and the money that he was born into, has been given so much. And all he needs to do to get over the finish line is the absolute bare minimum. And I guess with Christianity, he doesn't. Although it does seem like some evangelicals prefer DeSantis, so maybe there's an area where a little bit of study wouldn't hurt him. When it comes to COVID, if he had just done the bare minimum to protect people during the worst domestic crisis of our lives, he would still be president today. But goddamn, is this guy self-destructively lazy? And I want to remind everyone of this just happened this week. He failed in his Pastors for Trump call, but it has been years of people trying to get him to just say one relatively intelligent thing about the Bible. Take a look at this throwback.
I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into.
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite.
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like.
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible. The whole Bible is an incredible. I joke very much so. They always hold up the Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time.
He can't name a single verse. He can't name one verse. Not like do the whole quote. He can't even just name one. By the way, there's a lot. If you were to throw any random old-timey name, there's a good chance. Jebediah 7. I probably nailed it, honestly. It's not that difficult. But then they decide, oh, that minimal bar is too difficult. Just choose New or Old Testament. They gave him both of the choices, and he said both. It's just incredible, this Bible thing. It's like a kid being asked to review Moby Dick, and he says, I came for the Moby, I stayed for the Dick. I liked both of it, honestly. But whale, ocean, huge. How did every conservative Christian in America not turn against him at that moment? That is more. I have insulted organized religion many times in my life, but I feel like that was more clearly condescending and disdainful of religion than anything I, as an atheist, have ever said. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't even know if I want to share this, but whenever he was struggling to name a Bible verse or a story or anything, I thought, well, what's one that comes to mind for me first? And it was the story of Onanism. And I don't know how I feel about that. That was like the first story that I thought of from the Bible. So I think that's me, I guess.
I don't know if we have time to get into it. I think that's for you.
Let's not get into. Yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, then Google it and or don't. Maybe it's better if you don't. So
yeah, I don't know. Is that in the New or the Old Testament or both? They are incredible.
It's in the Old Testament. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
I want to say old because he was struck down. He was smote by God.
There's not enough smoting going on recently. Anyway,
not since the Old Testament. No. Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't care about Christianity at all. Okay, we're gonna move on to other news in just a sec. First, I want to read a few of these comments. Pitchfork's Dragon, member for 20 months, says, "Give one of the mods a Blue Apron gift card, or the table gets it." I believe not that many weeks ago, actually. I believe one of the mods did get one, but we'll say we'll see. I try not to be biased. I just come to the comments clean and just see who has the best comment. Silver Dragon, thank you. Phantom Rose, member for 10 months, says cowards who won't accept the risks of their jobs. Again, we can disagree about the cowardice or whatever. In this particular case, I think it's understandable cowardice, but I get what you're saying. Riki, the Guardian Dragon, member for 19 months, says I like to take a little TDR nap, then rewind after nap is over. Also, why I don't comment as much as I should. Apparently, Riki woke up briefly to leave that comment and then went back to sleep. Anyway, let's see. Gabby Mass says, I wish you would read out last names. I get comments for the other Gabby. By the way, I am your first member. Thank you again for your membership. Much appreciated. Okay, let's see. Jason, pronounced Jason, says in a super chat, I take a year-long break from political shows only to return to this hippie hosting the Damage Report. JK, you have the best co-hosts, especially Yasmin. Especially.
Thank you very much. That's very sweet.
Thank you. Okay.
And I like your hair, John. I feel like I always have to defend your hair when I come on this show.
Thank you.
You're looking great.
That. Thank you. We'll see how it goes together. But anyway, there is something arguably as important and world-shaking as the stuff growing from my head. Let's jump into this.
Dear friends, humanity is on thin ice, and that ice is melting fast. As today's report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, details, humans are responsible for virtually all global heating over the last 200 years. The rate of temperature rise in the last half century is the highest in 2,000 years. Concentrations of carbon dioxide are at their highest in at least 2 million years. The climate time bomb is ticking.
Look, most of what you heard there from the Secretary General of the United Nations is what you've heard before. We're at record levels of this and that, and the worst this and that we've ever had. That video could be from a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because we keep breaking records in those areas, but not everything was so repetitive. Saying the climate time bomb is here should draw the eyes, the attention of everyone around the world who wants us to have a world that we can continue to inhabit. But we'll see. We'll see if people pay attention. The warnings are as clear as they have ever been. For the first time, he said that developed countries must reach net zero as close to 2040 as possible, far earlier than the 2050 deadline. A lot of countries, including the US and the UK, have already pledged to meet. To limit warming to 1.5 degrees globally Celsius, global levels of planet heating pollution must fall by 60% by 2035 compared with 2019. And we throw around like 2030, 2035 quite a bit. But bear in mind, we've been regularly talking about this for 4 years, 5 years just on this program. That is a big chunk of the time to get to there. And so we need to make progress faster than ever before. I'm gonna highlight just a few of the recommendations from this IPCC report. Both the report, that's available, some great roundups of it, especially from international news outlets, because America rarely cares about this stuff, are available if you'd like the full details. But recommendations include no new coal and the phasing out of coal by 2030 in OECD countries and 2040 in all other countries. So in the relatively immediate future, getting rid of all coal, ending all international public and private funding of coal, obviously is an important prerequisite to that. Ensuring net zero electricity generation by 2035 for all developed countries and 2040 for everyone else. Ceasing all licensing or funding of new oil and gas. Stopping any expansion of existing oil and gas reserves. Shifting subsidies from fossil fuels to a just energy transition, and establishing a global phase down of existing oil and gas production. I think it is fairly obvious what the issues in achieving those goals are. It is the massive money and political, like, accrued power and advantage from the lobbies that would be harmed by this transition. Yasmin, what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's obviously frustrating that we've gotten yet another climate report that is so dire and is so much less hopeful than we'd like it to be. And it's very frustrating that we haven't made any progress, at least not in the direction that we were hoping to. I will never understand how global leaders are so incapable of, one, cooperating with one another and still calling themselves leaders. And I will never understand how any of them don't have any foresight or they don't care to, right? Capitalism isn't a real thing. It's a fake thing that we made up, and we're letting it dictate our actions in this real physical world. And I know, like, the economy is a thing, and there are dire consequences if it gets messed with. But we literally won't have a home anymore if this gets bad enough. And climate change has a ton of negative implications economically as well. And I feel like those don't get spoken about quite as much as they probably should. And of course, we're all disappointed that Joe Biden just approved that Willow drilling project in Alaska after explicitly promising not to. And of course, his motivations were economical. I don't know if he has some kind of long-term plan as to why that would be okay and how he's gonna balance the impacts of that. But I guess we'll have to see, because he's already broken that promise to us.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, look, he passed the climate bill, and then he's undercut it in 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
He's focused on his legacy, and yet again, he keeps undercutting it over and over and over again. Okay, well, look, hopefully, maybe the next generation of activists, next generation of politicians are paying attention to this, and hopefully they can take control very, very soon, because again, we don't have much time. By the way, one concluding thought: by the time the next assessment from the IPCC is prepared in 5 to 7 years, we may have lost any opportunity of reaching that benchmark of 1.5 degrees at that point. That is how quickly we need to make this transition. And we have all of the technology. Everything we need to do this is there, except potentially the political will. Okay, with that said, we're gonna very briefly jump into this last story and talk for a few minutes about it. This is gonna be a weird transition, so just buckle up. I read a fascinating story in Insider this week. It was about a set of twin sisters who were said to be the most identical twin sisters in the world. And they really mean it. They share everything. their literal words when they're speaking, the way that they dress, all of that, including a job, but also including a fiance. They're married to they're getting married, I suppose, to the same fiance. This is Anna and Lucy DeSink, calling themselves the most identical twins in the world. They have the same bathroom schedule. They work the same job. One as a salary, one as a volunteer, which is almost like a plot of an episode from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They complete each other's sentences or speak in unison, and they are married to the same man. They say that he's the first man they've dated together because he wasn't sleazy when they presented the idea to him. They said they fell in love with him, his personality, sense of humor, and ability to treat them how they want to be treated, which is clearly equally. He treats us equally, he never separates us, and he doesn't want to take us out separately, adding that if he kisses one sister, he always kisses the other one right after. And look, this is coming from like a TLC show, and so I know that it probably seems, I'll throw the word sleazy out there or whatever as a topic, but I don't know. They seem perfectly happy as. I haven't talked to the guy, but he seems okay with this. They had a conversation, so it seems like this wasn't a thing that was sort of stumbled into. They know what they want. And so I feel like we're supposed to have an issue with this because it's an atypical relationship. But who exactly is the victim here? I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's what it comes down to, right? First of all, I'm very disappointed that this has been on TLC and I have not seen it yet. So I'm going to go watch this later. I love my TLC shows. They are horrendous. But this one is, oh God, yeah. So if they're happy, they're happy. And I know that's what we talk about a lot on this show. Like, I don't have to understand your lifestyle to still support, your right to live that way. If they're happy, they're happy, but I don't get it. I don't like it, but it's not for me to like or approve of. So, I mean, what a strange way to live your life though. Like, don't you want to just like be your own person at some point? Just like be you.
They see being you as also being you, apparently. Like they do talk at the same time much of the time. Yeah. Again, I can't imagine it, but I don't know, part of having the sort of political orientation that we have, the political identity we have, is trying to put ourselves mentally and emotionally into the feet of other people. And I can't really imagine. I can't imagine being one of the twins. I can't even imagine being the man. I understand as like a younger man, maybe that would have seemed appealing to me. Yeah. It seems exhausting to me, the whole thing.
Like, what man would want to be in that position? When anytime you talk about like polygamy, it's like, fine, if that works for you, whatever, it's not for me. But if it works, but like, how does it work? And does it work? Because like, it seems like a lot of work for the man who's involved in these arrangements.
Yeah, or everyone, I guess. Clearly, this is just a variation on polygamy. And clearly that works for many, many people. I just hope that we're in a country that like we're rapidly shutting down what sorts of relationships or identities or orientations are acceptable. And so I just like leave people alone. Honestly, it doesn't have to be for everyone. It can just be.
And you know what? God bless TLC for celebrating the diversity of America, right?
Yeah, and doing it for empathy, not just to make money. Anyway, that's unfortunately all the time we have for our show and for Extreme Twins or regular twins even. Yasmin, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here. Where can people follow your work until next time?
They can find me the easiest places on my Instagram at YazK. Gotta do it, YAZZZZZK. That's 5 Z's.
5 Z's.
I did my fingers weird, sorry, it messed me up. But yeah, 5 Z's and YazK. That's where you can find me. And on the TYT channel, The Breakdown on YouTube.
Nice, thank you everyone. Everyone, thank you for joining us on the show. Pleasure to have you here. Indisputable is up next, and I will be joining Nina Turner for Unbossed in just a little bit. So I hope to see you there. For now, though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. I'll see you soon.